evening, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. I'm Sandy Quinn. I'm president of the Richard Nixon Foundation, and I welcome you here tonight. Thank you for coming. This is going to be an exciting, informative, provocative evening with author and talk show host, television personality Mike Gallagher. Now, notice that I have teleprompters today. Yeah, I know the president is home, he's not out speaking tonight, so I get that. A couple of things. One, I want to tell you about some of the upcoming events so that you'll know what's going on, and I hope you'll come to them. Tomorrow is a big day. It's our traditional 9/11 commemoration. We do one every year. We did one the first year. We did one a month or so after the actual tragedy hit New York and elsewhere. And every year we get a huge crowd, and we have a good speaker. This year we have from Camp Pendleton, General Mike Spacey, and he's excellent. He's an Expeditionary Force combat warrior, and he'll tell us what's going on in the world to prevent that sort of thing from happening again. It's at 11 o'clock tomorrow, and it's free. It's in the East Room. And not only do we have the general, but we have several features during the evening, during the program, including some great patriotic presentations by the combined Villa Park Concert Orchestra and the Orange High School Chamber and Choral Singers. And it's always great to have all those young people here reminding us of how great it is to be Americans. On Veterans Day, or pardon me, on October 18th, from 3 to 6, we have radio personality Larry Elder. He will broadcast live. He's been here before, and he's always done a great job. He'll be here live from 3 to 6, and you're welcome to come to that, and I hope you will. On Veterans Day, we have former National Security Advisor Bud McFarland coming in from Washington for our traditional free program at 1 o'clock, and that too is moving and inspiring. I hope you'll come. On November 5th, we'll close our Pat Nixon Centennial Special Exhibition, which is in the room behind us. I hope all of you have seen it already. If you haven't, please come before it closes then. This holiday season will present Christmas trees from around the world, holiday trees from around the world, and we'll have something like 27 different trees fully decorated from the countries that they represent, and it's a beautiful collection, and it's great for the people who you'll have visiting in town over Thanksgiving and Christmas, when after you've had the turkey leftovers, you're saying, what are we going to do with Uncle Harry and Aunt Minnie? You bring them to the Richard Nixon Library and see trees from around the world. On January 6th, we are planners, so we look ahead. Next year is the Richard Nixon Centennial year. He's 100 next year. So we have activities all year long. We'll kick it off here, January 6th, with a day-long series of activities, and Tricia Nixon Cox, the President and Mrs. Nixon's oldest daughter, will be here to participate. We'll have a birthday luncheon in the East Room. More information on that coming. On February 15th, we will open our magnificent Richard Nixon Centennial exhibit, which will be in our 4,100 square foot exhibit hall where the Pat Nixon exhibit is now. And we'll do the opening with appropriate ceremony and fanfare, so I hope you will make note of that too. Now tonight, we have the author of 50 Things Liberals Love to Hate. It's a great book. It's funny, and it's kind of sad because when you read through it and you're sort of amused at all of these things that author Gallagher says that they hate, and you think, how sad. How sad. John Wayne, McDonald's, Walmart, Boy Scouts, boys, girls, etc. He comes to us tonight to speak about this book. He is one of the best known, most listened to, most watched conservative commentators in America. Every week he talks to more than 3.5 to 3.8 million listeners every week. Talkers Magazine, which is the chronicle of the business, ranks him as the 6th most listened to. You go through those airport security things and something goes off. It's not me. Might have been my dog, but it's not me. So, he's the 6th most listened to talk show personality in America and the 7th most recognized talk show personality in America. Those are big numbers. Those are big numbers. And all began when he was just those are the 51 things we need. No, it's all a plot, you know. Glad it's happening to me and not mine. Do you think that can be fixed? Chris, who's on sound? Can we conquer this?
We're okay, it's a cable problem.
Well, do your best, I know you will. He's syndicated by Salem Broadcasting, which is the biggest syndicator in the country. He's all over the top 10 markets: Los Angeles, Chicago, New York, Philadelphia, Houston, Dallas, on and on. And he is carried in cities all over America as well. He comes to us locally in Los Angeles on KRLA 870 every evening. So, combined with his bestsellers and his radio programs and his public appearances, on top of all that, you put the Fox News television programming, which he's involved with. I watch him fill in for Hannity and fill in for O'Reilly. He's always on, and he's on repeatedly because they invite him back, because he's so good, he's so provocative. So he's everywhere, and we're delighted that he's here with us tonight, ladies and gentlemen, Mike Gallagher.
Thank you so much. That's so sweet. Thank you. Thanks, everybody. I can't believe liberals got to the sound system already. I haven't said the first word. Are you kidding? I am so honored and so delighted that you could join me tonight as I introduce my new book, 50 Things Liberals Love to Hate. Now, this book is about liberals, not Democrats, who are often not that much different from Republicans in many respects. No, this book is dedicated to that peculiar brand of American who self-identifies as a liberal, lives life as a liberal, and wishes more of us in America were liberal. Think Michael Moore. Think Nancy Pelosi. Think your local college professor. Think the driver of that crazy car with all of the Bush is Hitler bumper stickers on the back of the car. Think the checkout help with the master's degree in gender studies wearing the Che Guevara headband at your local Whole Foods store. You get the picture, right? And they dominate professions that leave a very large cultural imprint in this great country of ours. Professions like journalism, the arts, academia, the music industry, and of course, America's fastest growing band of entertainers, Cirque du Soleil acrobats. Who are these people who call themselves liberals? And how does such a small, tiny group leave such a big impact on our culture and our lives? What motivates them? Well, I am in an excellent position to answer these deep questions because I've been watching liberals closely for over 30 years. I've studied liberals like Jane Goodall studies her chimps. In their natural habitats and without judgment. In silence mostly, because we barely speak the same language. Now, I've been tireless in my research. I lived with liberals, I broke bread with them, I've humored them, I've teased them, I've prodded them, I've imitated them, and yes, even loved some of them because some of my best friends are liberals, some are even members of my own family. Now, my commitment to understanding liberals sometimes worried my good, dear conservative friends. Some even questioned my mental health. But I read the New Yorker magazine. I went to see the vagina monologues. I listened to NPR whenever I got the chance. I mean, I learned everything about the tsetse fly one could just by tuning into All Things Considered. And I even watched my carbon footprint, as much as a guy who loves big SUVs and has owned a well-cooled home in Dallas can watch my carbon footprint. What did I learn from my 3 decades of tireless research? I learned that liberals simply don't love many things about this world. They're endlessly trying to correct, fix, mend, and adjust every aspect of other people's daily lives. I learned that they spend a whole lot of time thinking about America's faults and how to correct them, about America's ills and how to cure them. Liberals love to hate things that most Americans love, and they spend the rest of their lives endlessly trying to take those things away from us, and they're convinced they do it all because they love us. Thus was born this book, 50 Things Liberals Love to Hate. I hope you'll enjoy it. McDonald's, or Who Stole My Happy Meal? The liberals are at it again, right off the bat. If you could build a time machine, and if you could go back in time far, not far, say 50 years or so, and you told the first American you saw that in the future, man would walk on the moon, we'd all carry video phones the size of a deck of playing cards, and that poor Americans would be fat, I guarantee you the response would be, wow, really? Poor people are fat? Because, of course, poor people are supposed to be skinny. They're poor. Rich people in America today look like old photographs of poor people during the Great Depression. The poor people look like the corpulent, trouser-bursting cartoon sketches of the robber barons of the 1890s. Now, conservatives see a chubby person like me, and they think, lay off the bread, Gallagher, take the stairs. Would it kill you to have a salad once in a while? Liberals see a fat person and think, we should immediately pass laws forbidding this kind of obesity, establish new federal programs and guidelines to correct this bad behavior, and create ways to federally subsidize weight loss programs. And who do they blame? McDonald's. Why? Because they sell delicious and fattening cheeseburgers and fries along with salads and McNuggets and a whole lot of other things. Even the beloved Happy Meal is under assault by politicians all around the country and by some who even call themselves scientists. One group with a very officious-sounding name, the Center for Science and the Public Interest, threatened to sue McDonald's if the burger giant didn't stop selling Happy Meals. In typical nanny statist hyperbole, they equated what the burger giant did to kids with child abuse, and worse, child molestation. McDonald's is the stranger in the playground handing out candy to children, CSPI's litigation director Stephen Gardner said in a prepared statement. He said, it's a creepy and predatory practice that warrants an injunction. Let's face it was Gardner's statement that sounded creepy. The fact is, liberals hate McDonald's and its competitors because they symbolize everything about America they loathe. Our entrepreneurial zeal, our ability to deliver high quality in a uniform way, our love of convenience and speed, and especially our ability to inspire and support businesses that can be franchised across the globe and provide millions of jobs. Now, they really hate that last part, don't they? McJobs. That's what they call them, McJobs. You know, to a liberal, a job isn't something that's intrinsically useful. To a liberal, the fact that fully 25% of all working Americans, and that percentage is much larger for Americans under 30, have worked at a McDonald's or one of its competitors, that's something that truly alarms liberals. It's not clear why exactly. Working for a large company is a terrific way to learn useful job skills like time management and customer service. For liberals, that is a big red flag. The hatred of McDonald's knows no limits. In his really gross 2004 documentary, Super Size Me, writer, actor, activist Morgan Spurlock, yes, that's his real name, hated McDonald's so much that he decided to eat McDonald's food and only McDonald's food for 30 straight days, 3 times a day, and film what happened. Well, surprise of surprises, he gained 24 pounds. Now, I suspect that would have happened if Spurlock had decided to eat at IHOP 3 times a day for a full month. The fact is, Morgan Spurlock wasn't interested in anything but vilifying McDonald's. Why didn't Morgan Spurlock, I wonder, choose to eat ice cream sundaes instead all day, every day, and do a documentary about that, or cheese, or canned ham? But that would not have made Morgan Spurlock famous. That would not have made Michael Spurlock the Michael Moore of his generation. Come to think of it, Spurlock should have followed Michael Moore around all day. Now that would have been fun to watch, huh? The truth is, Super Size Me wasn't as much a documentary as it was a filmed stunt. And what it really did was supersize Morgan Spurlock's bank account. And as a capitalist, I'm all for that, even if he is not. The food fascists love to hate on McDonald's, but many other potential targets are somehow spared. Starbucks, which sells sugared carbohydrates by the crate, and high-calorie coffee drinks, which are essentially fancy milkshakes, somehow are curiously exempt from the fast food hatred you hear from liberals. In other words, if you get fat on a double quarter pounder with cheese, liberals want to start passing laws and banning things. If you get fat on venti mocha lattes with a caramel shot and a currant scone, liberals are perfectly delighted to look the other way. But what they both represent is American ingenuity and entrepreneurial risk. What both Ray Kroc, the founder of McDonald's, and Howard Schultz, the founder of Starbucks, have in common is that both of them took something that all Americans loved and figured out a way to serve it faster and better than anyone else. Faster and better? Liberals dislike that. Job skills training on an actual job? Liberals hate that. Serving up food that's delicious and fattening, which requires individuals to exercise a little self-control, personal responsibility. Liberals hate that with a passion. Listen, all that hate wrapped up in a cardboard box, tucked into a sesame seed bun, with melted cheese, a little ketchup, special sauce, a pickle, maybe some fries on the side. Listen, if you're a liberal and you're feeling a little bit hungry right now, I've got some bad news for you. You just might be a conservative. Flag pins. Now, let me make a confession. Sometimes, when I find myself in a really liberal part of town, you know the part of town I'm talking about, right? Yoga studios, lots of electric cars with vegan on board bumper stickers, that kind of thing. I always make sure that I'm wearing my American flag lapel pin somewhere really conspicuous. It's kind of a silly little game I play with myself and with them, I know. I'm baiting them, I realize that, but for some reason I just can't help myself. Liberals really hate these little American flag lapel pins. I'm not sure why liberals hate the American flag lapel pin. They hate it more than the actual American flag, it seems to me. In those same neighborhoods, you see the American flag flying high in some places. Maybe it's because the lapel pin is smaller and at eye level. It's in your face. It's personal. And it's in a place that it's not usually found, rather than at the top of a flagstaff or next to a judge. I'll be at the counter with my purchases, or I'll ask someone a question, and I'll see their eyes flicker from my face to my lapel, and I'll see that look. You know the look I'm talking about. Hey, what's that? Followed by alarm. What's wrong with this guy? And winding up with a shudder of disgust. Probably some kind of America freak. I'll bet he's one of those right-wing nuts, too. It's almost like I had a swastika on my lapel. But surely that's not why they hate it, is it? I mean, when I wear my American flag lapel pin, and I always do in public, I'm not making a big political statement. I'm not talking about who to vote for in the next election, although you probably have a good idea who I'd prefer. The American flag lapel pin that I wear and that millions of Americans wear just means this. I'm grateful to live in a country that honors and protects freedom that offers boundless opportunities to our citizens, and that does its best to nurture the noblest parts of the human spirit. When I wear my flag pin, I'm just saying, when you get right down to it, I love my country. Maybe that's why liberals seem to hate it so much. You know, oh sure, they have the vocabulary down. They know how to frame the sentence so that it sounds like a declaration of patriotic feeling. I love America, they'll say, and then they'll add, I love the idea of America. And then comes that inevitable but, and the parade of horribles soon follows. They'll start listing all the things that America has done to let them down, all the injustices and the failings in this country, from the moment the Pilgrims landed on Plymouth Rock to the election of George W. Bush. I have to wonder if liberals do this with their wives, this but. I love you, darling, but that extra few pounds you put on your hips, they weren't there when we first met, and it would be great if you lost them. That's the kind of guy women really love, right? Liberals have reservations, it seems, about everything American. When they see an American flag, they automatically put an asterisk next to it. Yes, but, they want to say. Yes, but we're too rich, and our cars are too big, and we drive too much, and we eat too much, and we're too American. Yes, we saved Europe and are a beacon of liberty for the world, but we don't recycle enough, and we're too religious to be a really sophisticated country. During his run-up to the election, then Senator Barack Obama got into more than a couple of flag flaps, remember? There was that scene at an event with all the Democrat candidates standing on a stage in Iowa listening to our national anthem. In fact, reciting and singing the national anthem while facing the American flag. All but one had a hand firmly over the heart. Guess who? I'll give you a hint. His initials, B-H-O. No big deal, you say? Well, there was that Associated Press story back in October of 2007. That's the one where he went out of his way to stop wearing an American flag lapel pin. He explained his position at a campaign stop in Independence, Iowa, of all places. He said, and I quote, "My attitude is that I'm less concerned about what you're wearing on your lapel than what's in your heart." Well, again, try that with your wife, guys. I love you, honey. I love you, sweetie, but I'm not buying you those big diamond earrings because I'm less concerned with what you wear on your ears than what's inside your heart. President Obama was asked again about the pin in an interview with KCRG-TV in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. He said, quote, "The truth is that right after 9/11, I had a pin. Shortly after 9/11, particularly because as we're talking about the Iraq War, that became a substitute for, I think, true patriotism, which is speaking out on issues that are of importance to our national security." Those are his exact words. Yes, he said that. Now, it just kept getting worse, folks. The pin he said he didn't like, he actually used to like until everyone in America started liking it, and so he stopped liking it. In that interview, he actually referred to the American flag lapel pin as that pin.
I won't wear that pin on my chest. Instead, I'm going to try to tell the American people what I believe will make this country great, and hopefully that will be a testimony to my patriotism.
You heard it right. You heard it right. He called it that pin. A little bit like Bill Clinton referred to that woman, remember? But not to fear, not to worry. President Obama came around. That pin he stopped wearing because it didn't really show what was in his heart. He is now wearing near his heart today, just about every day. It's one of those cheesy, jingoistic things you just have to do as president, I guess. When he returns to civilian life, sooner, I hope, rather than later, I suspect the thing he'll like most is ditching that annoying little pin once and for all. I mean, after all, maybe he could replace it with a United Nations flag pin. That simple little American flag pin, honestly, the thing is no better than a nickel. It drives liberals bonkers. It makes them terribly uncomfortable, and it confuses them too, because here's a guy like me in their store or coffee shop who seems nice enough, who's smiling and being polite. I mean, I don't foam at the mouth or anything. I'm not making a spectacle of myself. I'm just standing there, with a tiny little American flag on my lapel, minding my own business, announcing in the quietest, most reserved way possible that I'm grateful to live in the United States of America. That's all. Just gratitude. Gratitude for the sacrifices of my forebears. Gratitude for the opportunities this country affords. Gratitude for the men and women who serve the flag in the military proudly. Gratitude for being a part of this amazing, ennobling experiment in representative democracy. Boy, liberals hate that. America to them is just okay, not good, not great, certainly not exceptional, just okay. About as okay as Sweden, not quite as okay as France. When I walk out of the store or the coffee shop, I have to admit to myself that I chuckle a little bit because I can hear them behind me trying to figure it all out. Conservative women, mouthy ladies. You know, if eye rolling was an Olympic sport, liberals would win the gold medal every time. To see some truly elaborate eye rolling, just drop the following words into your next conversation with a liberal. I was thinking about something Sarah Palin said the other day. Stand back. Let the huffing and puffing and sighing and moaning begin. It doesn't matter how you finish the sentence, by the way. You could say Sarah Palin likes chocolate ice cream, or Sarah Palin thinks coffee is good as a breakfast beverage, or Sarah Palin thinks panda bears are cuddly. The result is going to be a kind of deranged, automatic rejection of anything Sarah Palin says or thinks. Try it with Ann Coulter. Same reaction. Actually, try it with any well-known female who is unapologetically non-liberal, and you'll get the identical Olympic level eye rolling in just absolute amazement. Liberals hate mouthy conservative women. It's a fact. They hate this new generation of independent, conservative, brash-talking women that rejects the 1970s era feminist dogma. It's insulting to liberals that for all the wonderful things they've done for women, some of them just refuse to show any gratitude. I mean, liberals have worked so hard to break down the barriers of sexism that when Sarah Palin burst onto the scene with her unique brand of cheerful conservatism, they had no choice but to attack her for her looks, her hair, for her outfits, for her accent, for her education, for her children, for her makeup. For a group of folks that have tried so hard to eliminate sexism from the national discourse, liberals sure know how to use it when they need to, huh? It's the same with Ann Coulter. She's attacked regularly for her looks, her hair, her weight. It's interesting, since we're talking about looks, by the way, to notice the remarkable improvement over the years in the physical charms of women in the political realm. Consider for a moment Betty Friedan, one of the first feminists to emerge in the early 1960s. Now, fast forward 2012, consider conservative writer S.E. Cupp. Quite a difference, won't you say? There was nothing that matched the media elite's reaction to the sudden ascension of Sarah Palin. Sudden, of course, until you consider the fact that she was the enormously popular sitting governor of the largest state in America. The sudden ascension of Barack Obama from utter obscurity, of course, bothered no one in the mainstream media. The man had a resume so reed thin that even double-spaced and with extra large font, it could barely take up a page. And my crackerjack research team got their hands just on that document, on Barack Obama's resume, back in 2007, when he was looking to ditch his Senate gig and move up in life. Let me read a little bit for you. Objective, leader of the free world. Experience, 2005-2007, U.S. Senator. In the job description, he wrote, talked a lot, voted wrong a lot. 1997-2004, Illinois State Senator. He wrote that in that job, he talked a lot and voted present a lot. 1991-1997, University of Chicago and other places is what he wrote for his employers. And he listed his jobs as constitutional law professor and civil rights attorney. He described his work this way: talked a lot, wrote a memoir about my identity crisis. He was a little sketchy about the years 1985 to 1987, saying it was hard to remember whom he actually worked for. But he did say he was a community organizer, and his job description was described this way: organized people, trained people to organize. For education, he listed Occidental College, Columbia University, and Harvard Law. He listed his grades, SATs, and LSATs as not available. His interests: basketball, Marxist literature, writing about myself, talking about myself, making money, and saving the world. And yet, the mainstream media, lo and behold, fell in love with this highly qualified applicant, and fell in love with him because they liked the trifecta of the first black male liberal president more than they liked the first white female conservative vice president trifecta. And it didn't hurt that he went to the colleges the mainstream media adore, Columbia and Harvard, even if we have no idea how he got into either. Palin attended all kinds of colleges. Then she was a sportscaster, got married, had kids, helped her husband in his fishing business, became mayor of Wasilla, and then ran against a political machine in the state, the Murkowski family, and won, becoming the first woman to serve as governor in that state's entire history. But the sisterhood in the media went after her. Rather than swoon and fawn like they did with President Obama, they attacked. Katie Couric tried her best to derail Palin. She spent a full day with the candidate, all in the hope that she would catch her in some kind of a flub. She did. She asked Governor Palin what papers she read each day, and Palin didn't name the proper names for Katie Couric's approval. Indeed, she didn't name any. Now, few public figures publicly admit to which newspapers they read or what TV or radio shows they tune to, but this was different. It was Sarah Palin. Katie Couric had what she wanted and threw Sarah under the sisterhood bus. Can you imagine if Katie had exhibited the same zeal with President Obama? Imagine if she spent a full day with him and asked him a few tough questions like, how many soldiers are there in a battalion, Senator Obama? After some stammering and some ums and ah, Katie could have followed up. Senator Obama, you're asking this country to make you commander-in-chief of the U.S. Armed Forces. You have no idea how many men are in a battalion? Couric could easily have added, I'm sure John McCain knows that answer, and so does Sarah Palin because she ran the Alaskan National Guard. But naturally, that didn't occur. What a video moment that would have been. Katie Couric's sisterhood only applies to Democrat women, to liberal women, even if it means missing a great opportunity to stump the future president of the United States. When Palin did get the nomination, you would have thought that Katie Couric, Diane Sawyer, Barbara Walters, and the pack of shrill shrews on The View okay, Elizabeth Hasselbeck doesn't count, would have at least pretended to celebrate the announcement. But the street-smart, gun-toting, pro-life, pro-drilling, pro-Jesus, pro-military Sarah Palin was every liberal woman's worst nightmare. They hate Ann Coulter for the same reason, Michelle Malkin, Monica Crowley, and all the rest of them. They hate them because they don't comport to the official liberal version of womanhood. If only these mouthy women would just go away. Luckily for us, they ain't going anywhere. The South, racist, rebels, and rednecks. In 1767, Jeremiah Dixon and Charles Mason drew a map dividing the American colonies into the northern region and the southern region. Since that time, the Mason-Dixon line has pretty much served to mark the place where the north ends and the south begins. But there's a more accurate way to know for certain where exactly you are. Get into a car, drive here, go east, and then south. At some point, someone is going to start calling you sir or ma'am, and that's when you know for certain you're in the South. Southerners are just polite like that. They sir and ma'am each other all the time. They've got a million different ways to say thank you, and they use them all regularly. My favorite, for the record, is appreciate you, which I heard a young man say to me at a gas station recently outside Atlanta. Actually, what he said was, appreciate you, sir. Southerners are polite and thoughtful. They say please and thank you. They honor tradition and God, and liberals positively despise them. Really, it's true. Liberals hate the South. To liberals, speaking with a Southern accent is just another way of saying, hey, look at me, I'm a racist. When liberals hear a Southern dialect, what they really hear is, hey, better brace yourself, I'm about to talk about Jesus. When liberals encounter a yes, sir, or a no, ma'am, what a liberal brain actually hears is, hey, I'm a slow-witted hillbilly without a thought in my head or teeth. You know, think hee-haw meets Mississippi Burning meets Sling Blade, and you sort of get the picture of the South inside the average liberal's head. To liberals, the American South is a dark, scary place filled with Klansmen and spooky backwoods inbreds, trailer parks, and violent fat sheriffs. From the movies and the TV shows they make regularly to the thinly veiled arrogance in the pages of their newspapers, liberals cannot imagine the South as anything but the kind of place you'd best avoid. Because if your car breaks down, or you're on a rafting trip with friends, nothing good can happen in the South. Once that creepy kid with the banjo starts playing, It's all over. All bets are off. It's easy for liberals to characterize the South that way because so few of them ever actually go there, unless it's to take a sneering, ironic trip to Graceland or maybe a quick stop on the way to Hilton Head Island. If liberals did somehow take a wrong turn and end up driving through the real South, the South I know, they'd get a very different and, to them, disturbing picture of the modern American South. In fact, maybe that's what liberals need to do to really understand the country they seem to hate so much. It would be an eye-popping surprise for liberals to accept that the modern South has excellent restaurants, major international banks, research centers, and top-rated universities. They'd be amazed to see how up-to-date it all is. Heck, they even have dentists down there and cable TV. If we could somehow just forcibly march the urban, smug liberal through, say, Mississippi, we could stop for lunch at one of the many delicious places to eat and show the liberals something they probably never expected to see: black and white folks eating together. Not just eating at the same restaurant, but eating together, often at the same table. You see, that happens a lot in the South. Go into a restaurant in Birmingham or Jackson, you'll see a racially integrated crowd. It'll be diverse, to use a word that liberals love. But go into a restaurant in some other more liberal part of America, not so diverse. It would disturb liberals to realize that the South is a heck of a lot more integrated than the so-called sophisticated coast cities. It's not Memphis or Mobile that's stuck in segregation. It's LA, New York. Impossible, the liberals will cry, but it gets worse for liberals. For the past decade, African Americans from the North have been moving south in huge numbers. It's a total reverse of the Great Migration of the 1940s and the 1950s, when large parts of the southern black population moved north to places like Chicago, Detroit, New York. Now, though, blacks are coming back to the South. Impossible, the liberals cry. Don't those black people know that the South is full of rednecks and racists? Well, what black families know to the contrary is that the South has much better jobs and a better economic future, and more important, it's a better place to raise their kids. Put it this way, kids don't learn to say thank you and yes sir and no ma'am in liberal parts of the country or in liberal public schools. They learn that in places like Montgomery and Greenville. The Mason-Dixon line still shows up on maps, of course, but these days for a lot of Americans, it's better to be on the southern side. You know, how much better? The numbers don't lie. According to the latest census figures, the South was the fastest growing region in America over the last decade, up 14%. Americans are moving to Texas at a rate of 1,000 a day. That's why factories open in southern states like Alabama. It's why BMW opens facilities in South Carolina. It's why Atlanta, Georgia is a hub of international media and commerce. The American liberal, ensconced in his decaying metropolis or his blighted neighborhood, looks upon all of this and he hates the South like an East Berliner hated West Berlin. Around the world, we've seen this time and time again, that havens of entrepreneurialism and individual liberty have always outperformed the statist neighbors. Whether it was West Germany leaping over East Germany, South Korea outstripping North Korea, Hong Kong and Taiwan putting China to shame, or Singapore outshining the impoverished Malaysia. This has been a universal truth of history. The South fulfills that same role today. Its existence, its heritage, and its prosperity expose the liberal project as the impoverishing lie and deceit that it is. That's why liberals hate the South. Liberals hate the South because what they believe is an environment of ignorant hillbillies has defeated them in affluence and sophistication. Indeed, they can barely stand it, but there is hope. And it lies in the one Southern virtue that I've yet to mention, because much as the liberal hates the South, in the end, even the liberal has to find a place to live and work, and that's where Southern hospitality drives a final nail into the liberal dream. Because as the liberal packs up his stuff and leaves California, Detroit, or New York, sadly, he knows with dread, and soon he will hear the words that will drive the dagger into his most precious hopes. Howdy, neighbor. Success, or everyone gets a trophy. Liberals hate success for a number of reasons, including the fact that they hate competition and everything that comes with it. You know, to a liberal, there's no such thing as true competition, and there's no such thing as learning a valuable life lesson from losing. In fact, losers, those who say that 2 + 2 = 5, or those who might score fewer points than the other team, must be told that they're not wrong or that they lost, because to do so would hurt their precious self-esteem. It's the everybody gets a trophy mindset that's ruining the once great American Little Leagues. I mean, think about it. If everyone is special, then what you're really saying is no one is special. Think about that for a moment. In their obsession with stamping out failure, liberals have stamped out failure's close companion, success. Without failure, success is meaningless. It's a vapor. It can't happen. Back in 2010, I spent a few days on my radio show talking about an article I'd read in the New York Times about high school graduations and the issue of valedictorians. Valedictorians, an issue, you might be wondering? Did some valedictorian go on a crime spree? Did they go on some kind of an alcohol binge? What? No. It turns out, shockingly, that a whole bunch of schools in America think that having just one valedictorian is mean-spirited and not very inclusive. And so they are instead now having multiple valedictorians. Now, before I proceed with this story, I want to turn to the good folks at Merriam-Webster to get a definition of the term valedictorian. The student usually having the highest rank in a graduating class who delivers the valedictorian address at the commencement exercises. Now, when I went to school, there was one valedictorian, and that person had the highest grades, right? Then there was the salutatorian. That person had the second highest grades. They both made speeches on graduation day. Really bad speeches. Then there was me. It was a miracle I got any grades at all. No threat of me giving any speeches. Flash forward to 2010, Jericho High School in Long Island, New York, and that New York Times story. Turns out that one valedictorian would simply not do at this particular school, so they went with, wait for it, 7 instead. 7 valedictorians. What was the explanation? Was the move pushed by the parents, the students? No. It turns out it was one guy, Joe Prizzano. He was the principal at Jericho High. He didn't like having just one valedictorian. No. He said, when did we start saying that we should limit the honors so only one person gets the glory? He asked the New York Times reporter. Well, Principal Prizzano, Americans have been saying it for hundreds of years. The New York Times story even got more interesting. It turns out public school administrators across the country are beginning to side with poor old Joe. Here's how the New York Times explained the reasoning behind the disturbing new trend. Principals say that recognizing multiple valedictorians reduces pressure and competition among students and is a more equitable way to honor achievement, particularly when number 1 and number 5 may be separated by only the smallest fraction of a grade from sophomore science. Liberals do things like dispense with beloved traditions like the valedictorian. And then they decide for all of us how to create more equitable ways to honor achievement. I wondered as I was reading that article, why stop at an A? What about the students who came really, really close to an A? I mean, won't it cause them a lot of emotional damage to come close to an A only to find out they didn't make the valedictorian cut? And why not the kids who got close to getting a B? How about the B- students? Don't they deserve to be valedictorians too? Turns out that Lyons High School in Colorado pretty much agrees with this garbage. Brace yourself. They had 10 valedictorians last year. Count them, 10. And Stratford High School in the suburbs of Houston pretty much agrees with this insanity as well. They honored 30 valedictorians, 6.5% of their entire class in 2010. They all got gold honor cords. 30 valedictorians. I thought I was mad at Principal Joe. He looks positively stingy with his mere 7 valedictorians. Positively Victorian. It's not just the public schools now. This disease is spreading into our publicly traded companies too. Take General Motors, please. Actually, Americans did take GM, didn't they? We bailed out the car company and we still own a huge chunk. Take the big banks. Can't have them fail now, can we? It goes way beyond keeping score at the Little League game. Liberals hate success and its first cousin, competition. And if they have their way, we'll all be playing a scoreless game of life, Scandinavian style, with cradle-to-grave entitlements that assure little variation in income, with little, if any, variation between success and failure. The Second Amendment. Now listen, this is easy. Liberals aren't crazy about most of what's in the U.S. Constitution, but it's safe to say that what they hate the most is the Second Amendment. So let's start with the very complicated, lengthy text of the Second Amendment to the Constitution. Now, better settle in. This could take a very long time. A well-regulated militia, being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Wait a minute, that's it? 27 words? That's what the libs are so exercised about? 27 words in English words can't be all that hard to understand. But they managed to confuse the heck out of liberals. With those words, liberals see all kinds of possibilities and interpretations. They see ways to regulate and ban handguns and rifles, to force states to register all gun owners, to prohibit sales and transfer. In other words, all that 27-word sentence, the key words of which are security, free state, and right of the people, and shall not be infringed. Liberals see in those words ways to undermine security, constrain the state, and infringe the rights of the people. It's a pretty impressive feat, actually. You have to hand it to liberals. When they set their mind to it, they can invert just about anything. Now let's make our way through the big ones, shall we? A militia, they'll say. This is about militias? We have that. We call it the National Guard. Well, yeah, and the National Guard is a great thing. It's nice to know that some liberals are supportive all of a sudden of the National Guard, since they often disparaged it when talking about President George W. Bush's service in a branch of the Guard during Vietnam era time. But what the founders were talking about was the necessity of raising a militia at any time, which would require that citizens supply their own weapons. The founders knew that weapons distributed among the citizens were safer and more effective than weapons kept in a government-controlled armory. The framers also liked the idea of a bunch of states. Now, liberals hate that too. That's another chapter in my book. Each with its own idiosyncratic touches, all linked by a Republican government. They imagined a union of states in which the citizens of the individual states had a fair amount of say about what goes on inside their borders. Now, it's possible that it opens up the opportunity for certain states to vote to ban or regulate certain weapons, as some have done. But in general, the framers seem to encourage this kind of varied and often zany difference between the states. Liberals hate that, of course, because it means that certain states, like Utah and Texas, for instance, might be conservative and have right-wing laws. It also means that crackpot lefty states like Massachusetts and Vermont can mandate free M&Ms for everyone if they want. But that's not enough for liberals. The only kind of freedom they really like is the freedom to make you do what they tell you to do. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed, it says. So I can have a howitzer in my front yard? You right-wing gun nuts are crazy. Well, yes, I'm sorry, but shall not be infringed isn't all that vague a phrase, is it? It means, just to go over it one more time, shall not be infringed, as in you can't infringe it, as in... Or maybe slowly for liberals, it is what it is. Now, we all know the howitzer in the front yard argument is completely off topic anyway, because no one's talking about regulating howitzers in the yard. People don't have those. But what they do have are rifles and handguns they keep for protection or sport, and those are what liberals want to take away. And here's why they want to take them away: to protect us. That's right, to protect us. Nice of them, isn't it? Here you were thinking that you could protect yourself. According to the last count, about 30,000 people die annually in gun-related accidents. Remember that number, 30,000 annually in gun-related incidents. About 45,000 die in car crashes. About 37,000 die from poisoning. About 20,000 a year die from unintentional falls. The framers of the Constitution didn't say that guns weren't dangerous. They are, especially to invaders and despots and thieves. But they were necessary. That's what they said. And that's what liberals hate the most about the Second Amendment. It's necessary. It reinforces the constitutional notion of a free and sovereign people, citizens of a country that is a collection of republican states. Or, to put it much, much better, a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms, shall not be infringed. Pretty much every single word in that sentence is what gives liberals the heebie-jeebies. That's why they hate it. On the other hand, 20,000 people die every year from unintentional falls. I know, maybe the framers should have banned ladders. The simple fact is, freedom is dangerous. In his book, More Guns, Less Crime, author John Lott proved that in places where there are more guns in the hands of lawful citizens, there's less crime. And that having a gun and brandishing it actually prevents all kinds of crime in America, the crimes that didn't happen because a gun was displayed. Anyone who knows anything knows this: criminals are cowards. They don't like a fair fight. Criminals love picking on the vulnerable because they have an advantage. They love picking on little old ladies and night clerks who work alone. But a gun is the great equalizer. A single mom with a gun is scarier than an NFL linebacker without one. Now, that's not just a legal theory either. Take the Make My Day mom. Now, her story was one most of us in America truly loved, except liberals, of course. One night, January 2010, a couple of punks decided to celebrate the beginning of the new year by breaking into the trailer of a young single mom, 18-year-old Sarah McKinley. Sarah had recently lost her husband, and the girl was living alone in a trailer with her 3-month-old son in Blanchard, Oklahoma. Now, that's exactly why the bad guys chose her, because she was alone with her baby. She was vulnerable. Turns out Sarah had some company in the house that the thugs didn't anticipate. Their names were Smith and Wesson. Sarah was packing. She had a shotgun and a pistol, and she wasn't afraid to use either of them to defend herself or her baby. She called 911.
I've got 2 guns in my hand. Is it okay to shoot him if he comes in the store? Well, you have to do whatever you can do to protect yourself. I can't tell you that you can do that, but you do what you have to do to protect your baby.
You do what you have to do. She killed one of those men. The other ran away, a frightened coward. Now, fortunately for Sarah McKinley, she lived in a gun-friendly conservative state like Oklahoma, not an anti-gun state like Massachusetts. Liberals don't care what the Constitution says. They don't care about facts. And they certainly don't care about the Sarah McKinleys of this world and their right to keep and bear arms, the right to protect themselves. But the rights of that criminal trying to rob Sarah, well, that's another story. The suburbs. Little pink dull houses and little dull lives. Ask a liberal why he hates the suburbs, and he'll spit out a bill of particulars. They've always hated malls, of course. JCPenney, Macy's, you got to be kidding, right? Do people actually shop at those wretched places? But that's nothing compared with their contempt for strip malls. I mean, I know what you're thinking. If you got a Best Buy, a Panera Bread, a Bed Bath & Beyond, and a Target all in one place, who needs anything else? You know? Get all the necessities in one place. You get to enjoy the fresh air as you walk from shop to shop. Some strip malls even have a Buffalo Wild Wings, so you can snag a drink while your wife spends an hour picking out a new shower curtain. What's not to love? Mention Walmart and watch them have an aneurysm. And you should hear some of the things they say about the rest of the strip malls. They hate the big box stores because they're too corporate, and they put the mom and pop stores out of business full decades before Amazon could. Now, Amazon is okay with them because it's on the internet, and liberals are thrilled with anything on the web. They hate the way suburbanites shop, too. You know, mindlessly slurping up whatever tchotchkes some giant corporation puts in front of them like drooling Pavlovian dogs. Unless, of course, that company would be Apple, in which case they absolutely have to have whatever white plastic gadget just came out because it's totally going to change the world, man. And don't even get them started on suburban cuisine. You want to scare the heck out of liberals? Ask them to go out to dinner. After they've reluctantly said yes, tell them to meet you at 6 o'clock at the Red Lobster. They'll turn green from nausea. Or worse. It's just a scientific fact that liberals obsess over their grub. The overlap, you know, between Food Network viewers and Obama voters is pretty much total. Only Prius owners were reliably more Democratic in the 2008 election cycle. True story. I took a liberal friend of mine out to dinner one night after he left his fabulous Manhattan co-op to visit me out in the suburbs on Long Island. I didn't want to freak him out, so I took him to dinner at Carrabba's. Now, Carrabba's is the Le Cirque of strip mall chain eateries. He's a real foodie now, so we pored over the menu for a full 15 minutes, analyzing every dish, every ingredient. When the waiter came over, my buddy was ready. He starts grilling him. Is the salmon farm raised or fresh caught? Line caught or net? Those mashed potatoes, do they come with what kind of cream are used in the whipped potatoes? Could I substitute capellini for the penny? Now, mind you, this waiter was a kid from a local high school. He might have been 19 years old. Overmatched, he clearly failed the quiz. My buddy wound up ordering a plain pizza margarita. He barely touched it. I'm convinced that the reason liberals get so wrapped around the axle over food is they just have too much time on their hands. The reason they have too much time on their hands is the same reason they love to live in the city and not out on the suburbs like the rest of us. They don't have kids, oftentimes. The suburbs were created around a single organizing principle made easy to make life easy for families. Drive around your suburbs sometime and play Count the Minivans. Oh, liberals hate those too, by the way. Why do people drive those ugly, bulbous, soul-sucking monstrosities? It's easy, because they work. They make it easy to haul the kids to soccer practice, into the mall, into the movies, and they're safe considering the precious cargo you're hauling around. The suburbs were designed to be as ruthlessly functional as the minivan. And for the same reasons, we have crummy chain restaurants, because you can take 3 kids there for dinner and 1, not get ugly looks, and 2, not go broke. Why do we have strip malls? Because we've got to shop for provisions, we got to pick up extra flashing for the roof, we have to get Trevor a new backpack without losing an entire weekend, we have a dance recital to get to for Lily, we got to mow the lawn, there's laundry, there's church on Sunday morning, and if we work really, really hard and we're super efficient, we might get to watch a half of a football game later in the afternoon in our rec rooms or our man caves. It's not pretty, it's not sophisticated, but that's what suburban life is. People move to the suburbs to have families. We stop checking into Foursquare and twit-picking the cheese course. We stop spending our weeknights out with friends and our weekends exploring new bistros and going to wine tastings. We choose to do something that is, we believe, much more important, if slightly less glamorous. The irony is we don't begrudge our liberal hipster city friends their fabulous lives. In fact, if we were going to be deadly honest, we'd admit we kind of envy them. But the admiration isn't mutual. They hate us for our suburban life. The houses are cookie cutter and the food is offensive and the minivans stink. Now, when you tell your liberal friends that you're moving out to the burbs, they treat your lifestyle choice with utter disdain. You'd get more understanding and respect if you told them you were changing your name to Chantrell and you were getting a sex change operation. I'd like to think that deep down, the hostility that our cosmopolitan single friends have about our dull, drab suburban lives is this. They know they're missing out on something real, something deep, profound. I'm talking about the secret gratitude and pride one takes in actually raising another human being, taking care of that person, molding that person, disciplining that person, loving that person unconditionally, the way God loves all of us. And yes, occasionally having to bail that person out of jail. It's not all... Been there, done that. It's not always fun. It's not always great, but it's important raising a family, and it's real. Does it get any more real than cleaning poop from a child's rear end? The suburbanites, the suburbs, what we love, it's all about families, about loving someone beside yourself for a change, about losing yourself in someone else's problems like your kids, your family. You know what? It just doesn't get any better than that. Liberals love to hate babies, or my little miracle fetus. Walk around any lefty hipster neighborhood in Austin or Ann Arbor, Brooklyn or Berkeley. The first thing you'll notice are the baby strollers. Liberals love expensive strollers. I mean expensive, in the $2,000 range. I mean, one company makes a line complete with mosquito netting, presumably for those leisurely strolls along the Amazon you're going to take. And a suspension system that one would expect from a Range Rover, perhaps for those off-road adventures with the newborn. The 2012 Oopa Baby G-Lux stroller series is a marvel of modern stroller technology. As you walk around the left-wing monoculture enclaves, you'll see guys in scarves, important jeans, pushing those contraptions around, and young moms with yoga mats and tight-fitting tights hovering around the baby inside, asking frantically, Caleb, would you like the rest of the turkey wrap? Caleb? Soon, little Caleb and Shiva will be Priusing off to progressive preschool. Motto, we don't teach them how to read, we teach them how to knit. And before you know it, they'll be playing scoreless soccer and fretting about climate change and global warming. Now, who says liberals don't love kids? They adore kids. They swaddle them up in these pricey strollers, feed them organic food, and in general, carry them around in baskets until the little angels are ready to head off to college, where they'll learn all about contemporary transgendered poetry and how to be able to get a schedule to sleep until noon each day and have Mondays and Fridays off. Liberals love kids. It's babies they're not so crazy about, especially the inconveniently unborn kind. The unborn baby is currently the most troublesome and despised character on the liberal horizon. This little creature cannot win. If he's born, he'll condemn his mother to poverty and increase the population. Liberals, of course, are always worried about population growth, though it takes a whole lot of babies to pay for the entitlements and social state they so adore, let alone to perpetuate civilization. But if he or she is disposed of in anything less than a taxpayer-sponsored facility that is some kind of grim back alley, well, then that poor girl is going to die of sepsis or worse. The idea that there's someone to adopt and care for the baby, that there's another way, a more humane, caring, compassionate, and life-affirming way, is just not part of their decision tree for liberals. The only solution for liberals is to make abortion safe, legal, and taxpayer-funded. You got a problem with that? Hey, what do you want to kill mom? Here's the heart of the problem. Babies confuse the heck out of liberals. On the one hand, they represent what every believing far lefty thinks about people in general, that we're helpless, incontinent, and not very smart. They need supervision. They need to be under the control of a hopefully benign leader. On the other hand, thinking about babies, especially the inconveniently not yet born kind, brings on a lot of complicated baggage for them. For instance, as economist Stephen D. Levitt has shown, the rise in abortions among the black community since Roe v. Wade had a corresponding and positive effect on crime rates in the inner city. What he proved was a simple and ugly fact. Fewer black babies in the 1970s meant fewer young black men in the 80s and 90s, and fewer young men in general of the white or African American variety means crime rates go down. Seen from a straight statistical lens, abortion is actually a social good to many leftists. Indeed, there's no limit to the good that can come if we just kill off such problem groups like young men before they're born. Think of the benefits: less crime, fewer car accidents, less lousy television, and a whole lot less really awful music. Okay, so the price we pay for killing off those messy young boys is killing off all those cute baby girls too. But those little angels have problems of their own, like teenage pregnancy. What better way to end that problem too? Abort the babies so we can prevent future abortions. Liberals don't like hearing that rather controversial thesis of Dr. Levitt. But then again, there are lots of things that are true that liberals don't like hearing. The trick to dealing with liberals is to ignore what they say and concentrate on what they do. There is no more doting person than a pregnant liberal. In those same hipster neighborhoods, you'll find prenatal yoga classes, odd-smelling new agey oils for rubbing into the pregnant belly, exotic prenatal diet books, special music CDs for baby to enjoy in utero. And God forbid someone within 200 yards of a pregnant lefty lights up a cigarette. The SWAT team will arrive in 3 minutes or less. In other words, liberals behave as if that thing inside the engorged belly of a pregnant woman is actually a real live baby. Liberals don't like connecting those pesky dots. That's because babies aren't just noisy and messy. They also make a mess of the placid, untroubled liberal mind. Of course, once the child is born, liberals will step in with all sorts of orders and commandments about what school the little one can attend, what drinks and snacks are allowed in the vending machines, what sexual information will be given out. And when right until the moment the baby's head appears, it's hands off that non-baby. That as yet unborn non-baby fetus is merely the property of its host. Let's face it. It's a sad, small, depressing view of what life really is and what life means and from whom it comes. Birth is a miracle. It's unexplainable. It's uncontrollable. Liberals hate those things, which is why they hate babies. It's a grim world for the average lefty, and it's getting grimmer. That's why they love to use the word sustainable for everything. Sustainable energy, sustainable food, sustainable communities. For them, things don't get bigger and better. They just get sustained. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of sustainability. Doesn't really have much of a ring to it, does it? Maybe that's why birth rates in liberal communities are so low. And maybe that's why birth rates among Bible-believing Christians in the United States are so high. One side thinks things can get better. The other side thinks things stink and should stay the same. That's why liberals really hate the babies, because to be for babies is for real hope. To be for babies is for the future. To be for babies is for better days ahead. Walmart. What's wrong with everyday low prices? Sam Walton, a shop owner in Bentonville, Arkansas, had a big idea. If he could somehow keep his costs stupendably low, he could undersell his competition. With that competitive advantage, he could expand by expanding. He could get more goods even more cheaply and sell them at a deeper discount. Now, you know how this American success story ends, right? Walmart, barely 50 years after Sam Walton opened his first store, is one of the world's largest and most successful companies. It operates all over the globe, employs over 2 million people. and delivers low-cost goods to consumers in a reliable and consistent way. How do they do it? Well, they apply efficiencies in purchasing and shipping, squeezing, sometimes ruthlessly, costs out of the supply chain in order to turn those savings into lower prices for you and me. That means lower prices for 100 million Americans a week. That's about a third of the country. A Global Insight study in 2005 revealed that Walmart saves the average American family nearly $2,500 a year. Now, that barely covers the annual sushi budget for your average city liberal. But it's a really nice vacation for your average American family. How do they manage to keep the costs down and keep the customers coming? Former Walmart CEO Lee Scott appeared on Charlie Rose a few years back, and Charlie asked him what it was like to work for Sam Walton. Scott had a terrific story about Walton.
When I didn't perform, Sam would have a direct conversation with you.
What's a direct conversation?
Well, it is a
Lee,
conversation.
shape up.
Well, you go around the room on a Friday morning meeting, and there's 20 people in that room in 1980.
This is a year after you joined.
A year after I joined, and I'm sitting in that meeting, and these are all the officers of the company. And Sam would maybe have a P&L and a profit and loss statement that wasn't particularly good. And he'd get to you, and he'd say, when he was mad at me, he'd kind of point his finger, and he'd say, Scott, your driver uniform costs were up 30% this month. What's going on there? And you better know. The interesting thing was the whole cost for driver's uniforms was like $1,500.
But that amount of money meant something to Sam.
You're darn right it did, and taught me that meant a lot.
Now, tell that story to your average liberal. Talk to that person about Sam Walton's dedication and commitment to pass along savings to his customers, and it changes nothing with them. Talk about Walmart's state-of-the-art distribution and delivery system, you'll get a big fat yawn. Because liberals hate Walmart for their own reasons. Now let's face some facts. Walmart is a giant and relentless corporation that delivers prices so low and a selection so broad that it's hard for smaller local retailers to compete. A lot of them do have to close. Well, the same could be said for what Walgreens and CVS did to local pharmacies, what the Home Depot did to a lot of local hardware stores and lumber yards. But the Walmart haters, they give all the others a pass. That's because there's Walmart's unceasing focus on driving costs down, which means that it's tough on hourly wages and tight with benefits, but not that much tighter than the rest of the industry. The fact is that Walmart pays only slightly less per hour than the average American retailer, $11.75. But that's an average. Many of Walmart's workers are part-timers. At a time when jobs are in short supply and any job is better than no job, and where any job can actually lead to a better job, even in management, liberals should thank Walmart. The company employs a staggering 1.4 million Americans. That's a remarkable 1.1% of the U.S.'s total workforce of 140 million. But liberals and their allies and big labor unions instead tap out a steady drumbeat of criticism of Walmart for its labor practices. Through cost-cutting and supply chain management, Walmart has raised the standard of living for every American without question and employed all kinds of us. Liberals hate all of this. They don't value efficiency and progress. They certainly don't appreciate bringing low-cost consumer goods to the heartland. Liberals don't care if the store that is discounted flat-screen television that you want. Liberals, don't think you ought to want it in the first place. You see, it's not really Walmart that liberals hate. What they really hate about Walmart is what it represents, the full energy of a free market capitalist enterprise. That's right. Walmart delivers the engine of economic growth. Low cost, lots of choice, good service, tight management. Think about those words for just a moment. Low cost, choice, service, management. The only enterprise that's larger than Walmart is the federal government. Does it offer any of those things? Does any big government program beloved by liberals offer a fraction of the efficiency and service that every Walmart offers every day? Ask yourself, who would you rather have delivering your health care? The federal government or Walmart? Who would you have running the federal school system? The local teachers union or Walmart? Who would you rather have delivering the mail, for heaven's sakes? Liberals don't hate Walmart for its anti-union stance or its low prices. They hate Walmart because Walmart works and liberalism doesn't. Algae. Now, one of the greatest environmental tragedies of recent times was the BP oil spill in the Gulf of Mexico. Oil leaked into the pristine, crystal clear waters of the Gulf at an incredible rate of over 2 million gallons per day. The result was an environmental wasteland, a lifeless and desolate stretch of sludge and muck that extends the entire length of the coastline from Louisiana to Florida. The BP leak killed nearly all the seabirds in the region, destroyed the fisheries, rendered the beaches hazardous and unusable, and took a once vibrant and bustling region of the South and turned it almost overnight into an empty ghost town. Oh, wait a minute. That's not what happened at all, is it? Now, that's what the environmental liberals said was going to happen, what they imagined could occur. And thanks to the hysterical drama types in the media, that's what we all thought as the oil cascaded into the Gulf. That's what CNN's Anderson Cooper staked his entire show on. For week upon endless week, a breathless Anderson Cooper aired his nightly broadcast from New Orleans from the Gulf Coast. And not because Anderson Cooper cares one bit about the people in that region. He only visits the region when there's something in it for Anderson Cooper. Those people who make their living on the rigs in the Gulf of Mexico, those people who fish the waters, the people who run the restaurants and hotels from Biloxi to the Florida Panhandle, they're not Anderson Cooper's kind of people. He wouldn't be caught dead vacationing in Panama City or the Gulf shores if his life depended on it. He's more of a Martha's Vineyard, Southampton, South Beach kind of guy, or maybe Venice Beach. But for weeks on end, there was Anderson Cooper every night on the Gulf Coast, eviscerating BP, rooting for the oil to wash up on the shores and ruin the place. That's right, Anderson Cooper was literally rooting for the oil. Indeed, he was so invested in a bad outcome for BP and a good outcome for himself, a Peabody Award, maybe an Emmy, that what he was actually rooting against was the home team. He was rooting against the people he pretended to care about. He was hoping against hope that the BP spill would be the worst ecological disaster in world history. He was yearning for those oil-soaked spots on the beaches to spread and multiply, for the birds and the fish to start washing up on shore along with the toxic sludge. When that story didn't pan out, he had to be disappointed. When the carnage didn't come, he must have been down and depressed. 2 years later, here is what we know. And not because Anderson Cooper did some extensive follow-up reporting. The Gulf Coast is vibrant and bustling. The beaches are clean. The water is clear. Families still vacation there, especially on the beautiful barrier islands off the Mississippi coast. The fish are back, the shellfish too. So, what happened, Anderson? Where was this enviro-apocalypse you promised? Well, as it turned out, crude oil leaks into the Gulf waters pretty much all the time. It's a natural result of having so much oil under the surface of the seafloor that it seeps out. That's sort of the thing about oil in the Gulf. There's so much oil under the ground, it wants out naturally, which is why BP and other oil companies are there in the first place. The result of this entirely natural occurrence is the Gulf has a natural mechanism to absorb and disperse huge quantities of crude oil, salt water, and algae. The salt water disperses the oil clouds, and then the algae feast on them. Nifty handiwork by a power much higher than the EPA. So, 2 years later, the worst environmental disaster ever, and the oily wasteland never really happened. 2 years later, it's almost hard to find any sign of the oil leak in the region unless you count the billions and billions of dollars poured into the area by a remorseful BP. And what was the reason? Armies of environmentalists and college kids combing the beaches with paper towels and sponges, skimmers and equipment battling the oil sludge? No, it was salt water and algae. So why the hyper-dramatics, Anderson? Why the tears and wails and gnashing of teeth? Why is it that every time some oil spills, we're treated to a melodrama of overacting from the environmental left? As the oil spilled into the Gulf, it was like one of those scenes from the Arab streets with the women in the burqas making that noise. I mean, that's what environmentalists sound like. Every time somebody spills something, you know? Why do they do it? Why do they react? Power. It's all about the power. Because if you want to increase your power, the first thing you need is a really fat crisis. You need to scare everybody into thinking that this is really it. The Gulf of Mexico is going to be a dead zone. We've only got 3 years left to drive our cars, that the earth is turning into a sauna or an ice cube. Take your pick. They never seem to know which. Only then can you pass more laws, issue more regulations, get more up into everybody's life and business. For liberals, there's only one solution to every problem. There's only one way to clean up an oil spill or solve an energy crisis: give them more power, which is why they absolutely hate God's algae. Because the algae doesn't want any power, it just wants to eat the oil. The military are monsters in uniform. Picture this scene. You're a happy autocrat, ruling your people with the benevolence and wisdom that only the anointed possess. You've ordered your subjects' lives in the manner that is best for them. They're not always happy, but they don't always know what's good for them, or they would be happy. It's not easy being an autocrat. Sometimes you have to crack the whip. Sometimes it's necessary to throw your people into some camps, break up their families, or eradicate the occasional village here or there. This is the price of order. Whether you're progressing towards socialism, communism, fascism, Islamism, or that special Latin American dictatorship you can call your very own. It's the power of the state, of your state, that makes everything possible. Then one day your whole world is turned upside down. You've done something to anger the great United States of America. To your surprise, suddenly there are American soldiers everywhere. They're destroying your statues. They're liberating your people. And ungrateful as they are, your people are joining the Americans in hunting you down and bringing you to justice. As you, the formerly great despot of Durkistan, are dragged out of your spider hole, you realize your destiny has been sealed by the young men and women wearing the uniform of the United States of America. That's the liberal vision, one of centralized control, state domination, and the suppression of individual liberty in the name of progress, is often the same as that of many of the autocrats our military has crushed over the years. C.S. Lewis once remarked that the most oppressive of tyrannies is a tyranny that is exercised for the good of its victims. And this describes the project of liberalism to the T. Liberalism is the contention that all governance and policy ought to be judged not by its outcomes or its means, but by its intentions. That's the core ethic of the liberal. It gives us the key to the real reasons the liberal hate the military. The first is the U.S. military's long-standing record of smashing the liberal project on every continent in every era. When Americans destroyed German militarism in World War I, liberals understood that we crushed a particular model of centralized, aggressive state control that they themselves aspired to. When the Americans again crushed the Axis in World War II, liberals knew that with those powers died a vision of centralist, corporatist, hierarchical governance that they not so secretly revered. And when the American military, under the despised Ronald Reagan, laid to rest once and for all the hope of communism, liberals were once again deprived of a model of totalitarian control for which they had much sympathy. The liberal who's trained at Berkeley or Brown or Williams no doubt has a meltdown at the thought of a confident, aggressive, victorious American failing to respect the multiculturalist ideas that provide the basis for their whole worldview. Where the liberal espouses the false equality of cultures, the American soldier demonstrates with the rifle and the MRE the intrinsic superiority of ours. Where the liberal pays lip service to the validity of all mores and beliefs, the American soldier embarks upon missions every day to forcibly eliminate tyranny. And where the liberal subscribes to a creed of American impotence and our inability to change the world, the American soldier demonstrates that American power changes the world for the better every single day. Peace through superior firepower is a credo the American soldier lives by. Give Peace a Chance is, well, a really crappy song by a guy who also imagined no heaven and no countries. The American soldier could never imagine living in that world. And that's another thing about liberals. They don't even like American soldiers. They don't like who they are and where they come from. I mean, how do I say this? Listen to the way liberals talk about our soldiers. During the Iraq War, liberals were constantly saying things like, well, we're for the soldier, we're just against his mission. That's like being for McDonald's and against the beef. That's like being for football players but against the coaches and the team. That's like being for freedom but against democracy. Or being for the people who work at corporations, but against corporations themselves. Ooh, I forgot. And that's what liberals really think about those things too. Telling a soldier you're for him, but against his mission may make the liberal feel a little better, but not the soldier who's risking his very life for the mission. But liberals don't like our soldiers for other reasons. For one, a disproportionate number of our troops come from the South. They believe in God. They love guns and football and NASCAR and love their country so much that they decided to fight for her and maybe die for her. Liberals see it a little bit differently. They see soldiers as being victims of economic circumstances that compel them to join. They see the military as an outpost for uneducated bumpkins and inner-city kids who join the military because they have no other options, they say. Now, I'd love to see a liberal actually say any of this to a soldier's face. Don't hold your breath. They know that the concerned, smug look on their face might be wiped off with one smack. When the liberals' favorite soldier, John Kerry, returned from his 4-month summer vacation in Vietnam, cameras in tow, he flew straight to Washington, D.C., threw the medals he didn't earn into the Potomac, and testified before a bunch of senators that the guys he was fighting with were a bunch of monsters and animals. Liberals ate it all up, and the liberal media especially. This ambitious Yale man, Kerry, was chairman of the Liberal Party of the Yale Political Union. He was trotted before the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, a committee he would later chair, to tell his story about his service in Vietnam. And wow, what stories he told. Not even his stories, but stories by a group called the Winter Soldiers Project. Stories Kerry didn't bother to fact check. Why bother when they fit your agenda perfectly? That the stories were largely proven to be pure fabrications didn't stop John Kerry or prompt even an apology.
They told the stories of times that they had personally raped, cut off ears, cut off heads, taped wires from portable telephones to human genitals and turned up the power, cut off limbs, blown up bodies, randomly shot at civilians, razed villages in a fashion reminiscent of Genghis Khan.
Genghis Khan. Unbelievable. He spoke in his weird, affected Masterpiece Theater accent. And you know, when you listen to his description, it sounds like an average week for Saddam Hussein and his sons when they ruled Iraq. But Kerry was describing the American soldier. He was happy to smear all GIs and do so with that dour, haughty pomposity we've come to know and dislike Kerry for, and all to advance his own standing in his own political career. Here's how he described his fellow soldiers. Quote, "The country doesn't know it yet, but it's created a monster in the form of millions of men who have been taught to deal and to trade in violence and who were given the chance to die for the biggest nothing in history," he said. Now, the liberals really ate that up, and John Kerry, a warrior for the liberal cause, kept on feeding them more and more. When asked about why he thought our soldiers, the so-called monsters he described, did what they did in Vietnam, John Kerry went straight for the cultural jugular.
I think clearly the responsibility for what has happened there lies elsewhere. I think it lies in large part with this country, which allows a young child before he reaches the age of 14 to see 12,000 violent deaths on television, which glorifies the John Wayne syndrome, which puts out fighting man comic books on the stands.
John Wayne syndrome? I didn't know liking John Wayne was a disease, Senator Blue Blood. Kerry didn't blame the soldiers for being monsters. They just couldn't help themselves. It's the country they grew up in those John Wayne movies and those comic books that turned those poor guys into monsters. That's what liberals really think about our soldiers and the country they serve. And then there's one last reason liberals really despise the military. His name is George S. Patton and all that he epitomized. I love just running through some of his most famous quotations. It gives every liberal a migraine. He said, "A good plan violently executed now is better than a perfect plan executed next week." Liberals hate that one because they're always in search of perfection. He said, "If everyone is thinking alike, then somebody isn't thinking." Liberals hate that Patton gem because they seek conformity. And then there's this Patton classic. Battle is the most magnificent competition in which a human being can indulge. It brings out all that is best. It removes all that is base. All men are afraid in battle, he said. The coward is the one who lets his fear overcome his sense of duty. Duty is the essence of manhood, he said. Battle, competition, winners, losers, duty to country, manhood. That's why liberals hate the U.S. military. Because our soldiers believe in all of that stuff crazy old Patton believed in, and they're willing to pay the ultimate price for those beliefs. Immigrants, give me your tired, poor, undocumented workers. Liberals love to say that they love immigrants, And then the minute you turn your back on them, the little rascals go about pitting legal and illegal immigrants against one another. No, it's really worse than that. They actually pretend that there's not a difference between the two. Have you ever watched a debate about illegal immigration? The next time you do, I want you to see if you've noticed what I've noticed. At some point in the conversation, whoever's arguing for open borders and amnesty for illegals will suddenly stop using the word illegal in front of the word immigration and will just start talking about immigration as if it's all the same. During the debate, it usually takes a few minutes for the person on the other side of the debate to notice that the word illegal has been dropped. It's like that old Bugs Bunny cartoon where he and Daffy Duck are both trying to convince Elmer Fudd that it's time to hunt the other guy. It's duck season, it's rabbit season. It's duck season, it's rabbit season. And then, you remember, Bugs will throw in the quick switch, it's rabbit season. And poor Daffy won't notice, and he'll just automatically blurt out, it's duck season. Bugs will smile and say, okay, have it your way, it's duck season. And Elmer Fudd swivels his shotgun toward the hapless duck and blows his beak right off. That's the game liberals love to play with this issue. They drop the illegal part from illegal immigration because they don't see a difference between the two. And they don't want us to either. To liberals, there's no difference between someone who came to this country legally and followed the rules and someone who snuck in and who remains here in violation of our laws. And when they debate the issue, they always want to blur the distinction. I guess there's no difference between robbing a bank and using the ATM either. In both cases, you're just taking money out of the bank, right? But most Americans know there's a difference, and the group who really knows are the immigrants themselves. People from Europe and India and China and all over the globe who waited in line, filled out the forms, obeyed the law, and are now lumped together now by liberals with folks who didn't. And the millions still waiting in line, waiting for one of those open spaces that the illegal immigrants keep taking. That doesn't bother liberals, of course, because liberals hate immigrants almost as much as they hate rules. Let's set the record straight. Immigrants, legal immigrants, are America's greatest renewable resource. From the very first days of our country, people have come to our shores because they wanted what America promised: freedom, opportunity. Nobody took a tiny berth in steerage and crossed an ocean because they heard that in America the government gives you stuff, or that there's a special loan program for people of a certain race or ethnic background. The immigrants who came here legally, and not just long ago, but recent ones too, didn't come here to change America. They love America the way it is. They came because the idea of America, a place that rewards hard work, that encourages entrepreneurs, that places family and freedom and God higher than anything else powerful and attractive and worth sacrificing for. That's why they come. They come to be Americans and to raise American children. No one is more patriotic than an immigrant, which is why the immigration process is such an important one. Liberals don't see it that way, of course. Liberals are always looking for the next big group of victims to help. So for them, illegals are the perfect category. Since most illegal immigrants are from Spanish-speaking countries, liberals want to make Spanish the semi-official second language of America. They want schools to teach in Spanish and government offices to offer bilingual services. They want to offer easy citizenship to illegal immigrants, irrespective of how they got here. In other words, they don't want illegal immigrants to change into Americans. On the contrary, liberals want to use them to change America. It's all a transaction for liberals. They make illegal legal, and that gives liberals the votes they need to enact their dumb policies. Give us your vote, and we'll change America. That's the deal for them. Now, since there are somewhere between 10 and 15 million illegal immigrants in the United States, that represents an awful lot of votes, which is why liberals will do almost anything to win them over. And that's why liberals hate legal immigrants. Liberals also hate the legal immigration process itself. Immigrants are actually compelled to go through a certain process to become Americans. We make them memorize those silly little facts about American history, the ones our own kids don't even know. And we actually give them a test. They pass the test, we make them take an oath. Oh, the horror! Here is that oath. I hereby declare on oath that I absolutely and entirely renounce and abjure all allegiance and fidelity to any foreign prince, potentate, state, or sovereignty, of whom or which I have heretofore been subject or citizen, that I will support and defend the Constitution and laws of the United States of America against all enemies, foreign and domestic, that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same, that I will bear arms on behalf of the United States when required by the law, that I will perform non-combatant service in the armed forces of the U.S. when required by law, that I will perform work of national importance under civilian direction when required by the law, that I take this obligation freely without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion, so help me God. That's what it says. No wonder liberals hate legal immigration. Every year on the day of Frank Capra's birth, I try and play a soundbite on my radio show from a speech that he gave at the American Film Institute in 1982 after he received their Life Achievement Award. Now, Frank Capra was a first-generation Italian immigrant who gave us such classic movies as It Happened One Night, You Can't Take It With You, Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, and It's a Wonderful Life. It's a wonderful life indeed. In that 1982 speech, Capra talked about America and the journey that brought him here.
Nearly 79 years ago, I celebrated my 6th birthday in the black, dark hold of a creaking ship crammed with retching, praying, terrorized immigrants. 13 days of misery. And then the ship stopped. And my father grabbed me and carried me up the steep iron stairs to the deck. And then he shouted, "Chico, look at that." At first, all I saw was a deck full of people on their knees, crying and rejoicing. My father cried, "That's the greatest light since the Star of Bethlehem." I looked up, and there was the statue of a great lady, taller than a church steeple, holding a lamp over the land we were about to enter. And my father said, "It's the light of freedom, Chico. Remember that. Freedom." Finally, there is something I must say to some other members of my family, and I believe that they will hear me. Mama, Papa, Big Brother Ben, Josephine, Tony, little sister Ann, remember the day we arrived at the Southern Pacific Station here in Los Angeles, and Papa and Mama kissed the ground? Look, the American Film Institute has given me its Life Achievement Award. And for that, I am thanking them and all my friends who have come here. But for America, just for living here, I kiss the ground. Thank you very much.
Now, let's face it, if you're a liberal, you probably didn't get a chill like we did over Frank Capra's immortal words in that speech. Let's face it, I don't think we're in any danger of witnessing a typical liberal offer to kiss the ground of the United States of America anytime soon. And finally, E Pluribus Unum. From the one, many? The Great Seal has got everything that liberals despise right up there front and center. In the first place, you got your eagle holding arrows. Now, what good could those arrows possibly serve aside from celebrating the violent bloodlust that liberals see in Americans? It doesn't matter to them that in the eagle's right talon, he's clutching the olive branch of peace, making the visual point that Teddy Roosevelt made 150 years later with the words, "Speak softly and carry a big stick." Liberals don't think we need those sharpened arrows. Liberals would prefer it if the bald eagle on the Great Seal was holding olive branches in both talons. Or, better yet, maybe an olive branch in one and maybe a soft cushion in the other. That, of course, could entice our enemies to lie down and snooze. Or maybe the olive branch and a bottle of lavender massage oil. Or perhaps one of those loofah sponges they use, in the spas. Actually, anything from the Brookstone catalog would suit liberals just fine. The key for liberals would be to get rid of those awful arrows. We don't need arrows. We don't need a big stick. We need just a couple of Nerf toys and a pleasant, hopeful expression. And that's another thing that's wrong with the seal to them. The eagle looks too angry, too hurtful, and judgmental. Liberals, given the choice, would replace that scary eagle with something more loving, more gentle, something like the popular children's TV figure Barney, the purple dinosaur. "I love you," the Great Seal would project to all who gaze at it. A big purple dinosaur holding a juice box and a gender non-specific plush toy. But what about the most troublesome part of the Great Seal? What about that awful motto, E Pluribus Unum, Latin for out of many, one? It flutters on a banner around around the purple dinosaur's head. Out of many, one is the national motto. And it's what the founders imagined it meant, that out of the great and celebrated differences between us comes one nation and one larger purpose. E Pluribus Unum is perhaps the most obnoxious motto the founders could have come up with. As far as liberals are concerned, they don't mind the E Pluribus part. They love to note the things that divide and separate us. But they positively despise the unum part. The truth is, the founders anticipated this. When they gathered to form a nation almost 3 centuries ago, they were a collection of very different men. The Puritans from the north had complicated and not totally friendly relations with the Quakers from Pennsylvania, who in turn pretty much hated the Virginia Cavaliers, who for their part viewed the Scotch, Irish, Georgians, and Carolinians with contempt. They were different, in other words. They were e pluribus kinds of guys. And they knew that if America was to succeed, it would have to find some way to get an unum out of all that pluribus. Now, liberals hate this. They hate any attempt to find common ground among us Americans because their political principles and their political agenda is all about dividing us, drawing distinctions, making lists of in-groups and out-groups, turning us all into victims or victimizers. In 1994, Al Gore gave a speech at the Institute of World Affairs in Milwaukee about, well, you guessed it, world affairs. This was during some downtime in his truly remarkable career, somewhere between the time he invented the internet and the time he discovered global warming. In that speech, the subject turned to E Pluribus Unum. He said, quote, "We can build a collective civic space large enough for all our separate identities, that we can be E Pluribus Unum, out of one many," he said. Out of one many. That's what he said, I swear. Those were his exact words. Now, Gore was quickly mocked for what many thought was a gaffe, an error. I don't think it was an error. It was a Freudian slip, because it's what the liberals really want the Latin phrase to mean, out of one many. Now, contrast his talk with a speech in 2005 from Dr. Larry Arnn, president of Hillsdale College, a wonderful place where students are actually required to study the Constitution. Arnn was addressing the ways in which our Bill of Rights actually breeds harmony among Americans. Here's what he said. "One may pray all he pleases, and others are left free to pray or not. And with all their property intact, short of slander, libel, or treason, one may say what he pleases and do no harm to another. One can see how the right to property conceived, has the same attribute. If my property is the fruit of my labor and not of yours, then we have no conflict. My having my good deprives you of none of yours, and your having your good leaves me secure in mine." The interesting thing about this understanding of rights is the harmony it breeds in society. This harmony, or to use the political term, this justice, is the reason why our Constitution has lasted so long and our nation has prospered so well. Brilliant point, Dr. Arnn. Liberals love to talk the harmony talk, but our founders walked the harmony walk. And we, the people, have been the beneficiaries. So let's go back to where we began, shall we? We fixed the seal. The eagle is now a purple dinosaur. The arrows are now a plush toy and a kid's drink. But the motto remains tricky. E pluribus angry? Maybe e pluribus oppressed? E pluribus omnipotent? Government, not God? Something like that. Which brings us, of course, to all 50 chapters of 50 things liberals love to hate. And it's a blast for me to read them all. It only takes about a minute, and we're going to go quick. Ready? Here they go. McDonald's, flag pins, NASCAR, steakhouses, the Pilgrims, John Wayne, George Bailey, Walmart, football, conservative women, black Republicans, Christians, the Bible, the South, the West, Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, honesty, success, the Second Amendment, the First Amendment, pools and patios, the suburbs, freeways, babies, seniors, taking risks, small businesses, American Toyotas, immigrants, workers, teachers, doctors, patients, science, algae, V8 engines, bright lights, the Berlin Wall, charity, profit, talk radio, American military, the founding fathers, the states, the Constitution, e pluribus unum, apple pie, and America. God bless America and these United States. Thank you very much, everybody. I hope you get the book. Thank you. Thank you very much. You guys are great.
Hold on, Mike. Okay, Mike's agreed to take a couple of questions before we get out of here. Then he'll be in the front lobby. First one right here.
I called you on the radio. We didn't bring your shoes. We didn't bring your Chick-fil-A.
Where's Chick-fil-A? You were going to bring a Chick-fil-A sandwich.
It was going to get too cold. We'll make good by it. But
thank you.
I couldn't hear your answer because there were too many Priuses buzzing by.
Clicking by. The Priuses were clicking, yes.
What was your answer about why we don't have any conservative moderators on the upcoming debates against these demon rats?
Well, it's a perfect metaphor for the machine we're up against. If you expect this is going to be an easy ride for Governor Romney, it's not. And it's unbelievable that there are just going to be liberals who are going to be moderating the debates. The bar, well, we shouldn't have. The bar, though, is so much higher for Governor Romney than it is for President Obama, and I think we know that going in, and we've got to accept it. It's tough, but it's true.
Next question over here.
Mike, I got a two-part question.
Yes, sir.
My first question is, what is this thing between you and Hewitt concerning the late owner of the Browns?
Well, apparently, Hugh, as a huge Cleveland Brown fans, you're not supposed to say Art Modell's name because he moved the Browns, the franchise, to Baltimore. So Hugh takes that very personally. But let me tell you something. Hugh Hewitt has been so kind and gracious, and he's a good friend of mine. And we were playing back and forth, but he was great to promote tonight's event. He, of course, was a driving force behind the Nixon Library, and he's one of my best friends in the business. He's a great guy.
My second and last question is, why'd you stop at 50?
First edition. First edition. If this book does well, we'll do a second edition, I hope.
Next question back here.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, Mike, what's the secret to winning in November?
Well, as we talked about raising the bar, you got to vote. We got to get everybody to vote. I can't tell you how many people I meet around the country, hardworking people, dishwashers, legal immigrants who say, I've never voted, but this is the year I have to vote for Mitt Romney. This is the year I got to vote. The enthusiasm is there. We just have got to translate that into actual literal votes. And, let's just and I say this all the time. It's very important to me. Don't minimize or underestimate the power of prayer. Prayer works. I dedicated 50 Things Liberals Love to Hate to my Denise, and longtime listeners to my show know that I lost Denise a few years ago to cancer. And I wrote in the book that the book is dedicated to my Denise, whose love and hearty laugh made the world a better place. She's always in my heart. The last year that Denise was sick, radio audiences knew she was sick, and they were praying for her regularly. Denise didn't, I asked her, I said, we don't have to talk about this on the air. And she said, no, go ahead. Maybe we'll inspire other people because everybody's touched by cancer. I'll tell you something. In that year that she was sick, she was never in pain. She was never afraid. She was never frightened. Now, she wasn't Superman, and I'm certainly not Superwoman, and I'm certainly not Superman. I will go to my grave believing that she was strong because of the power of prayer that lifted us up, lifted our 4 boys, and lifted her through a very difficult time. And now I know that she's looking out over me and hoping the book is a bestseller and praying and looking out and guiding me. But prayer, take it from me, prayer works. And that's what we need to pray for our country and our leaders, too.
We'll do one more question, and then we'll get out of here so he can sign in the front lobby.
Yeah, and we're going to sign books in front of the Time magazine wall out there, I think, right?
And personalized. But before we do, each of you has one of these membership applications underneath your seat. If you could take a peek at it and possibly help out the foundation, it really helps us out. And if you do sign up, you can pay $50 to $5,000. You get a one-of-a-kind, individually numbered Commander-in-Chief cap, and
nice.
They come in khaki as well. But here's our last question, and then we'll have the signing.
Right now we're in the Nixon Library. Richard Nixon is probably one of the most hated people in American history if you're a liberal. But his accomplishments are almost, as president, are almost entirely liberal. For example, he embraced the Great Society. He got us out of Vietnam. He made a nuclear arms agreement with the Soviets and so on. And Senator Hugh Scott, who himself a liberal in 1970, said that under Richard Nixon, the liberals got the action. Now, why doesn't Richard Nixon rank high in the liberal pantheon?
Listen, I will simply say this. I've been blessed and honored to tour around the country. Tomorrow I'll be flying back to New York, and I'll be a guest with Sean Hannity Wednesday night on his show to talk about the book. And I'm doing book signings in Long Island and New Jersey. I was in Texas. I was in Ohio. I will tell you something. This visit tonight, and especially blessed by this room of wonderful patriots who came out to hear us speak tonight, the Nixon Library appearance is going to go down in 2012 as the single best appearance of my entire book tour. I'm proud to be here. Very proud to be here. And and real honored to be in this beautiful, beautiful place and this wonderful tribute to President Nixon. The folks here on the staff have been extraordinary and hospitable, and I'm just honored to be able to spend a little bit of time with you tonight talking about my book, 50 Things Liberals Love to Hate. Thanks so much for coming here. I'll see you at the book signing. God bless you, and God bless America.
Real quick, before we go, I want those of you that have come to our events know that it's not the authors you come for. It's these great gifts that we give them. These What Would Nixon Do mugs. They're available in the store. Be sure to grab one. Mike will be up front. Thank you, Mike.
So much, Chris. Outstanding.
Sorry.